Good evening. I'm Haylee Ficuciello, Senior Correspondent for Englebrook Independent News. Welcome to this week's edition of the Federal Crime Report, where we examine some of the most significant federal criminal prosecutions from across the western United States. Tonight's report spans 10 federal judicial districts and highlighting major investigations involving child exploitation, international drug trafficking, violent crimes, immigration offenses, financial fraud, human trafficking, and organized criminal enterprises. We begin tonight in Washington. Federal prosecutors in Seattle announced the sentencing of 27-year-old Patton George Bussey, a former Falls City resident, to 9 years in federal prison after investigators discovered child sexual abuse material on his electronic devices. The investigation began after a cyber tip from the message platform Kik alerted authorities that illegal images had been shared online. Homeland Security investigation connected the account to Bussey while he was already under investigation for alleged child sexual assault case in both Washington and Utah. Federal Judge Jamal Whitehead imposed lifetime of supervised release following Bussey's prison sentence, stating a lengthy sentence was necessary to protect the public. Bussey separately faces pending state charges alleging the rape and sexual abuse of children. In another major Washington case, 69-year-old John Michael Sherwood received 15 years in federal prison sentence after being convicted for orchestrating an international drug smuggling operation across state of Juan de Furco. Evidence showed Sherwood attempting to transport roughly 300 pounds of methamphetamine and nearly 1 kilogram of fentanyl from Washington into Canada using inflatable watercrafts and jet skis. Fortunately for the investigators, the operation literally washed ashore. Becher discovered duffel bags filled with narcotics along Olympic Peninsula Beach, leading authorities directly to the conspirators. Federal authorities described Sherwood and his accomplices as the transportation network of an international drug organization responsible for moving enormous quantities of narcotics towards Canadian markets. Next, we head to Oregon. In Oregon, 31-year-old Cody Bernal Corallo of Ontario was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for distributing methamphetamine. Investigators documented multiple narcotic sales before executing a search warrant that uncovered several firearms, including machine guns. Federal prosecutors also announced charges against Jonathan Uriel Garcia, who investigators say was operating with a transnational criminal organization based in Portland metropolitan area. Authorities seized approximately 16.5 kilograms of methamphetamine and additional heroin during the investigation. Garcia pled not guilty and remains detained awaiting trial. Continuing on to Idaho, federal prosecutors in Idaho charged 66-year-old Maureen Kosick, originally from Bosnia, with attempting to fraudulently obtain United States citizenship. According to the indictment, Kosick allegedly concealed his role during the Bosnian conflict, where prosecutors say he participated in the abuse and assault of prisoners while serving as a senior official in the anonymous province of Western Bosnia. Investigators further allege he reportedly lied during the immigration interview and failed to disclose pending war crimes allegations overseas. If convicted, Kosick faces significant prison time. Now we move to Utah. Federal authorities in Utah announced major fentanyl trafficking charges against 3 defendants following separate seizures totaling approximately 20,000 fentanyl pills. Prosecutors allege Luis Angel Soto, identified in court documents as a Mexican national unlawfully presented in the United States, along with Fabio Garcia and Joseph Gomez, participated in drug trafficking operations centered in Tulare County. Investigators say 2 separate law enforcement searches recovered thousands of blue counterfeit M30 fentanyl pills following an alleged drug transaction involving a semi-truck and passenger vehicle. The defendants are scheduled for trial later this year. Next, we head to Nevada. In Las Vegas, Jesse Ross Coey pled guilty after federal investigators recovered more than 23,000 images and nearly 1,900 videos containing child sexual abuse material from a digital device. According to prosecutors, Coey purchased extensive collections of illegal material over multiple years before federal agents executed search warrants at his residence. Sentencing will be scheduled by the court. Federal prosecutors also announced the guilty plea of David Ralph Weber, who admitted to operating multi-million-dollar scheme importing misbranded prescription drugs from India. Authorities say Woodbert falsely marketed products containing prescription illicit medication as all-natural supplements before distributing them through smoke shops, convenience stores, adult retailers, and online. Federal investigators estimated the operation generated more than $1.9 million in revenue. Continuing into California, federal prosecutors in Northern California secured a guilty plea from Michael Simon, who admitted to participating in a conspiracy involving human trafficking through force, fraud, and coercion in Oakland. Court records describe the scheme in which victims were recruited, controlled, advertised online, transported to hotels, and physically assaulted if they failed to comply with demand or surrender money earned through the commercial sex acts. Also in Oakland, Maxifer Palma, a Honduran national, received a 16-year federal prison sentence following a conviction involving fentanyl trafficking, methamphetamine distribution, firearm offenses, and narcotic activity occurring inside a residence where children were present. Investigators connected Palma was both a drug trafficker and a violent home invasion investigation. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, Christina Ann Mobley was sentenced to 20 months in federal prison after admitting she embezzled more than $500,000 from a North California construction company. Federal prosecutors say Mobley exploited her trust accounting position by writing unauthorized checks, paying personal expenses with company fraud, and manipulating payroll records over several years. Now we move into Arizona. Federal immigration enforcement remains exceptionally active in Arizona. During the first week in July, the U.S. Attorney's Office filed 279 federal immigration-related criminal cases, including illegal re-entry, unlawful entry, and human smuggling prosecutions. Among the cases was an alleged smuggling operation involving an unaccompanied minor. Separately, Derek Lee Myron of Toba City received a sentence of life in federal prison plus 40 additional years after being convicted of murder, aggravated assault, robbery, and multiple firearm offenses stemming from a deadly shooting in Naja Nation. Next, we moved into New Mexico. Federal prosecutors charged Bradley Isaiah Davis with assault causing serious bodily injury, assault by strangulation, and child abuse following allegations of repeat domestic violence occurring over several years. Investigators say the victim suffered extensive facial injuries, fractures, and bruising. Also in New Mexico, Mexican national received 46-month federal prison sentence after participating in a human smuggling operation that resulted in the death of 26-year-old Elvian Vrata Marquez, who died from extreme heat exposure after allegedly being abandoned in the desert. Federal investigators say the victim was left behind while smugglers continued transporting the remaining group towards the United States. In another case, Shelton Alante was sentenced to 24 months in federal prison after admitting to assaulting a woman while violating a tribal court protection order. Continuing into Alaska, an Anchorage woman identified as Mao Molly Lee received a sentence of 12 and a half years in federal prison after once again returning to large-scale narcotic trafficking. Federal prosecutors say Lee resumed distributing methamphetamine, heroin, fentanyl, and cocaine shortly after being granted compensation released from earlier federal sentence. Investigators also uncovered nearly $100,000 in money laundering transactions tied to illegal drug proceedings. The court additionally ordered 8 years of supervised release and imposed a $25,000 fine. Finally, we conclude in Hawaii. Federal prosecutors in Hawaii announced that Kalani Limbikin, co-founder of a violent extremist online network known as Colton's, was sentenced to statutory maximum of 10 years in federal prison for possession of child sexual abuse material. According to the evidence presented during the sentencing, investigators found Limkin using online platforms to manipulate vulnerable minors, encouraging self-harm, exploiting children, and distributing child sexual abuse material as a part of a broader violent extremist ideology. Following his prison sentence, Limkin will remain under 20 years of supervised release. These cases illustrate the wide range of federal investigations currently underway across the western United States. From international narcotic trafficking and organized criminal enterprises to child exploitation, violent crimes, financial fraud, immigration offenses, and human trafficking. As always, Englebrook Independent News will continue monitoring these prosecutions and provide updates as additional court proceedings and sentencing hearings occur. One final reminder: federal charges, indictments, and criminal complaints are allegations only. Every defendant is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in the court of law. For Englebrook Independent News, I'm Haylee Ficuciello. Thank you for joining this week's edition of the Federal Crime Report. We'll see you next time and have a good evening.